Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of Orange Weekly After Dark. As usual, I am your host, Jason Dandino, and joining me tonight is Kevin, I Dream of Hot Cocoa Dandino. Kev, how are we doing tonight?
I mean, ow. I hurt.
Fair enough. Tell you what, we're going to throw 30 seconds up on the clock for you. 30-second rundown. Ready and go.
Okay, that hurt. That hurt a lot. Offense had a chance to go out there and show what they can do, carry the team with all the injuries on defense, and they completely fell flat. Defense did what they could, but unable to get off the field, stop the Falcons, stop Matt Ryan, and it just put us in a terrible position. So here we are, 3-5 on the season.
All right, best time yet. We have 8 seconds to spare there. I'm not sure if that's a case of you getting better, the case of similar story, different week. Either way. Like I said, guys, similar story, different week. Broncos falling down 21 points, making a comeback late in the game, but unfortunately this time unable to complete that comeback, falling short to the Atlanta Falcons as we move to 3-5 on the season. Injuries were, again, another story of the day. Entering the game without our top two corners, missing AJ Bouye and Callahan, and missing Shelby Harris as well. A tough go for the defense, and I know we keep saying, this next man up mentality, and next man up and next man up, but with the Broncos this year, I mean, at a certain point, you say next man up, and there is no next man to come up. I mean, they have just been decimated by injuries, and that added to the list yesterday. Albert O out for the season, confirmed ACL tear. So that's another ACL in the Broncos, and I think it puts the NFL count to 30 for the year. But again, another season-ending injury for the Broncos, and a guy that was just starting to get a stride. Obviously has had a connection with Drew Lock, having previously play together in college. But again, we keep saying next man up, but I mean, at this point, what do the Broncos do?
I mean, you're starting to run out of men. You know what I mean? You're running out of players. So I don't know, man. It's you got to find something. You got to find a way to win. And this is where us growing organically through the draft is going to help in situations like this. When you have seasoned veterans, which we don't have many of right now, especially with Courtland Sutton out. But the more experience you get with those starters and second stringers, when you bring on those, draft picks, that are doing really well. Yeah, they may be third string, but those are really quality third string players, and you can trust them to go out there and do their job more or less, right? Versus where you have, one really good set of starters, and then after that, you're screwed, right? So we're kind of right there in that middle of, okay, we have some depth, but now we're getting to the point where we've gone through the depth that we have, and we're getting to that desperation point, right? So, I think that's where we're at. Is it's going to take time to continue growing through the draft, but I like where we are. I don't like this, not the record of the season, but looking forward for the next 2-3 years. I like where we're at in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of a promise in this young team. And again, we keep iterating, throughout the course of our shows, how young this team is right now and the potential that lies within this team. The past 2 weeks now, despite our injuries, we've still mounted solid comebacks. One was successful, one obviously wasn't. But either way, we've had two halves in different football games where we've looked like a football team, a true NFL team, capable of producing yards, capable of having a great defense, getting touchdowns on our offense. I wonder if they can still hear me. Sorry, I have technical difficulties on my end here. But and maybe it just comes from, partly being a young football team, but these are two games where if we played the full game where we did the entire half, like we did that entire second half, both those games are entirely different outcomes. The Chargers game is a blowout, and this. We'll just keep talking. I try to fix mine. I'll be the faceless host for now. Sorry for the face you have to deal with, but what has to go on for this team to start games the way they're ending them?
Yeah, I mean, that's where it just comes down to, coaching comes into play at some point, but the players themselves have to go out there and execute. Locke needs to stop being trying to be Tim Tebow. You like Tebow, I agree. Red Cloud, how you doing? Glad you're here. And I know exactly what you want to say. You said it for weeks now, so go ahead and say it, man. Go ahead and say it. Robert, why is our luck with tight ends so bad? I'm going to say, why is our luck with players in general so bad? I mean, our injuries are numerous, and I think if you look at the number of injuries we have on injured reserve, we have the most money in injured reserve in the league right now. And that, I mean, a big chunk of that is coming from Von Miller, but still the rest definitely adds up. So, the tight ends suck. All right, our tight ends don't suck, but when it comes to the injuries of those tight ends, that's where we're at. Nick Vannett actually had a really solid game, and so what I think you're going to see is between Noah Fant and Nick Vannett, they're going to be a really good 1-2 punch there. Obviously, we're going to miss Albert Okwuegbunam for the rest of the season, but it is what it is.
Yeah, obviously injuries are a part of any NFL season, but I honestly cannot remember a Broncos season where they've dealt with this many big injuries in a single season. They've absolutely been decimated by injuries, and it's tough. It might add to the rebuild year, and we can see, what depth we have and what depth we need to get rid of. I think they need to take a serious look at Harris after this last game because he was pretty brutal. And I think if we had kept Bosby over Harris, I think that would have helped some of those issues that we had yesterday. But at the end of the day, we let Bosby go, and that put Harris in that position, and he did not succeed. Kareem Jackson also had a rough day in coverage. Again, just another example where we are missing that. But, I saw earlier a comment, and this might be one of them too. And see, this is where I disagree. This may have been Fangio's worst game as coach. Doesn't look good for his job if we keep playing bad. That's just it. Is one, how do you game plan when you have almost 6 stars on defense out with an injury against a very solid offense that the Falcons have going on right now, first of all. But second of all, and I don't want to keep hounding this because I feel like we talk about it every single week come on, but what does getting rid of Fangio right now do for this team?
Nothing. I mean, now you're talking about starting over again, and you may have an interim head coach, but you can guarantee that once that offseason starts, you're going to have a brand new coaching staff. And here you are with all these young players. Drew Lock's on his second offensive coordinator in his second year. You have all these other young guys that you switch over the playbook again. Now you're essentially starting from scratch, more or less. So, it's not going to do anything for you.
Well, and I just want to add here, too, for Fangio's case, look at what he did to the Chiefs defensively, right? The defensive game plan against the Chiefs. We held them to 9 points minus the obviously 2 plays where the defense wasn't on the field, that pick 6 and the special teams return. So held defensively Mahomes to 9 points in the first half. And then you look at the past 2 games, and again, the whole team started out terribly, but the adjustments he made at halftime then held the Chargers and the Falcons to virtually no points. The only points that the Falcons got last game in the second half was when Drew Lock set them up in prime position at our 10-yard line with that awful pick. But on top of that, the story that I think is getting missed is we had 2 failed onside kicks, but our defense held them both times to allow our offense another shot at it, right? I mean, onside kick usually leads to at least a field goal because you only have to get one first down and they're in field goal range. And both times our defense held them. And so to Fangio's credit, with the halftime adjustments, his game planning, I don't think it has anything to do with Fangio at this point. He is doing the best he can with what he's got and still producing results. And yeah, they need to figure out how to start games. But defensively, I don't see how you can possibly fault the guy.
No, completely agreed. Rocco, see, I don't know if he's and Red Cloud thinks that, and I love you, Red Cloud. Love your brother. Glad you're here, man. You're one of our top fans. But Red Cloud here 100% believes that we just need to get rid of Drew Lock immediately, actually like 2 weeks ago. Is he in development top 10? I don't know. Does he have the potential to develop over a year or two to really get to the point where he's consistent? Yes. And if we have a solid defense like we're going to have with Coach Fangio, because I don't think we're getting rid of him for at least another 2 years after this, you don't need a phenomenal offense. You just need an offense that can move the ball, be consistent, not turn over the ball, right? And put some points up on the board. And so are we looking for a Peyton Manning? Well, I hope not, because you're never going to find another Peyton Manning, right? So Rocco, I mean, the question is, I don't know, but it's too soon to tell if Drew Lock is a bust or not. This was his, eighth game he's ever started in, maybe ninth, if you include the Pittsburgh game where he started but went down right away.
Yeah, a little more than that now, but yeah, I mean, I think it was his 10th. But either way, and here's Red Cloud.
Sorry,
here's
man.
the thing is,
sorry, man, it's not happening.
It's not happening. It shouldn't happen. I mean, Drew Lock, for all intents and purposes, is a rookie. Again, 10 starts. 10 starts. That's a rookie. And you don't know what you've got in a player in 10 games. You just don't. And so, say we lose again, but we know that Ripien is not the answer either. So why not take those last, at that point, 7 games in the season and try to see as much as you can what you have in Drew Lock? Again, what benefit do you get of putting Ripien in? He's not going to be started. Ripien 100% is not the future of this franchise. So why would you take Drew Lock, who in a lot of people's minds is still a question mark? And again, I'm not saying he's going to be a phenomenal quarterback in the league, but what I'm saying is I don't know yet, and there's no way that anyone can know after 10 starts. He's showing flashes of brilliance. He mounted a 21-point comeback against the Chargers, which is statistically very improbable. And then he had a very close chance against the Falcons, which came up short. But I mean, there were a lot of issues with that. Yeah. If you talk about the defense letting up 30 points for another game, he's not getting much support on the defensive side either. So at what point do you have to just ride out Drew Lock and see what you got?
Now, I mean, why not? There's no reason to just not play him. And there's a lot of good Drew Lock talk for sure. Jose here is asking, do we think we should gave McManus that kick early on in the game? And so it sounds like, and I haven't heard the clip itself, but Coach Fangio actually said in the post game that he called the timeout because he wanted to go for that long field goal. We're gonna swap over here.
Technical difficulties are
surprise. We were in the same room the whole time, yay! But now we have to sit next to each other.
We're not socially distanced. We apologize, but please do for a lot of reasons.
But he wanted to, and then the special teams coach McMahon, came in and talked him out of it. Which you're the head coach, and this is where it's like, dude, you're the head coach. If you want to do it, yeah, you take inputs from your other coaches, but if you're already going to call the timeout for it, now you're wasting that timeout. And I think it definitely came back to bite us there at the end of the first half, right? But they were saying before the game, McManus was kicking 68-yard field goals. And that was 58, 59. Dude, again, it's early enough in the game that what are you gonna lose? You miss it. Okay, they get the ball at about midfield. Try to hold them to a field goal, or even if they get a touchdown, technically, normally you'd still be in it because you'd have an offense that can go out and put a solid drive together and put points on the board. But we didn't have that at all. So I'm gonna twist that a little bit that way. So yeah, that's the thing, is like, why not go for it, especially after you call the timeout, right? So Jose, very, very solid point. Jeremy's he misses Jake the Snake. Completely agreed. He's 3-0 against Tom Brady there.
Yep.
Fantastic. Daniel says he can't see Shermer keeping his job. And look, once again, he is the 5th offensive coordinator we've had in 5 years.
Yep,
we've
pretty close.
6 years. We've had constant turnover in the offensive coordinator position. You can't keep doing that. You cannot keep doing that. Is he going to keep his job this year? Yeah, he's going to have at least 2 more years, as I see it, unless next season just utterly goes to crap, right? I think you're going to be looking at coaches like McMahon and the quarterback coordinator, I can't remember who it is right now. Those guys might be looking at getting a new job for sure. But when it comes to reinstalling a brand new playbook with all these really young players, you cannot do that. And I don't know how many other times I can say it other than I'm going to say it a million more times over the rest of the season. So yeah, Daniel, it's not going to happen. We've got to find some consistency and continuity on this team in the position. Red Cloud, Flacco just put on with the Jets, bro. Yeah, I mean, so it's the Jets and the
the Patriots are terrible this year. I mean, let's be real. This is not the Patriots of years past. I mean, Flacco, if Flacco played like he did tonight consistently, he would still be the starter for the Broncos. But I mean, he had more than enough chances to screw that up, and he did for all intents and purposes.
Jose here. Look, if you get a new head coach, they're going to bring in their own staff. You're not going to find a quality head coach. Let's say you want to, we're going to put Fangio as the defensive coordinator. Any head coach is going to come in and say, no, this is my staff. If you're not going to give me control over my staff, I'm not going to take this position. So there is no, hey, we want to keep Fangio as the defensive coordinator and bring in a different head coach. No, that's not going to happen. That will not happen. I guarantee you that. Any decent head coach is going to look at John Elway and say, if that's the case, I'm gone. I'm walking. It's not worth it because I need to have control over my staff. It's my team at that point. And if you're going to be dictating to me as John Elway or as the trust or whatever, what I'm going to do, then there's no use in me being here whatsoever. So it's a good point, Jose. I'm not like trying to, take away your point or whatever. It's a good question, but it's just something that feasibly in the NFL just is not going to happen.
Well, if you scroll down a little bit, I can't get on my computer, but Chris has a comment too. And his comment is, we need a plan for the next few years. And I think we have the plan. And the plan is consistency, right? And that goes across all boards. It goes consistency in our coaching staff of who it is, who our coordinators are going to be. It's consistency in the players we have and developing the players that we know are going to be the core, right? Your Jerry Jeudy's, your Hamlers, your Drew Lock, right? And it's finding a way to play consistently. I think the plan is to stay the course. The plan is not to throw out the baby with the bathwater here, right? It's a terrible plan. And here's the thing: we're 3-5 with, if not the most tied up in IR money wise, then the second most. It's between us and the 49ers right now.
Yeah.
And you can't just keep going through this cycle because again, I keep bringing up the Browns. That's what the Browns have done. They have a bad season. They clean house. They bring in a new staff. They have a bad season. They clean house. They bring in a new staff. They clean house. And they now have one of the best QB talents in the league, I think. And they're still struggling. And they're still struggling because they don't have a consistency in anything. They don't have a consistent scheme. They don't have a consistent game plan. They don't have a team identity at this point. And so it's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And so, the plan is, in my opinion, for the next few years is to stay the course. Maybe the only thing I would add is to find a freaking owner.
Yes.
But everything else from top down, and again, maybe some minor adjustments, right? Like we talked about the special teams coordinator for sure. I think anytime you finish 32nd in the league, it's time to change course there. But as far as your big guys go, and Jose temporarily,
the shorter the better.
For this guy, I tend to ruin his self-esteem for multiple reasons. But your Elway, your head coach, your offense coordinator, defensive coordinator, and your core players, you got to stick with.
And Red Cloud, yeah, look, there are no good words to say right now other than you got to look past. Obviously, we really, really, really want to and need to beat the Raiders, but you got to look past this next year, the year after. You've got to look and see where we're going. John Elway is bringing in really good talent through the draft. That's where you're going to grow the team organically. And yeah, it's going to hurt. And for anyone out there who says, well, we've been doing a rebuild for 5 years now, I'm going to say, no, that's not the case, because for 3 of those 5 years, John Elway was in the mindset that if we, he wasn't drafting well, and he thought that, well, if we just bring in a couple awesome free agents, we'll be back in the playoffs. So he wasn't focused, and he wasn't even admitting to being in any sort of rebuild whatsoever. We didn't start seeing this until about 3 drafts ago. So the last 2 years, this is really our maybe full second year now that Drew Lock's kind of getting into the mix of things. So it hurts. We're about 3 years behind of where we should be. We should have gone into a full rebuild the year after Peyton Manning left, and just, you know what? We have this awesome defense. We're not going to be able to keep all of them with the salary cap. Maybe we need to start looking at building organically versus just throwing pieces in.
And you know, to be fair, I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? I mean, what team after your Super Bowl victory goes, okay, we're going in rebuild mode? Not a single time.
How many teams after winning a Super Bowl lose Peyton Manning?
It doesn't matter. No team will ever win a Super Bowl and then, while keeping their head coach who just won the Super Bowl in his first season as a head coach, no one as Super Bowl champions are going to go, okay, it's time to clear house and try to rebuild.
No, not clear house, but you've got to really focus on building. You got to retool.
And you got to retool, but not rebuild. You don't rebuild after a Super Bowl. You do not rebuild after a Super Bowl.
Retool and recognize that Trevor Siemian is not going to be the answer.
Sure, but to say that we should have entered a rebuild after our Super Bowl is, I think, a little
semantics.
Okay. It's not semantics. I think to say that is overkill at best. And, you know, if you look at the situation, okay, then we lost Kubiak
here's another good one.
For reasons, but how many teams had, and that's just the thing is, right? And that was, I will say, I've defended Elway pretty extensively over the years, but that was a mess up on his part, right? You had the unfortunately quick leaving of Kubiak. Nobody really saw that coming. And that was a bad hire. And it took 2 years to let that play its course. And that's what set us behind. And I think that is where that quick spiral then got us into, okay, now we have to rebuild because because Vance Joseph has spiraled this team into the fiery depths
even further than
you know, I do think that if we were able to keep, if Kubiak stayed on board, and not blaming him, there were obviously health concerns. I don't blame him for leaving, but if he stayed longer, I think would have been able to retool and stay competitive, especially with his offensive mindset. Maybe find a better quarterback along the way. But I don't think we are where we are today if Kubiak stays on board for at least a few more seasons. I think the transition to Vance Joseph and how catastrophic he was to the organization is what truly got to the point where we said, we got to start over at this point.
My only rebuttal to that is I think what we went through after the Peyton Manning years, the 2 or 3 years after that, is John Elway was forced to change how he drafts. Because he had not been drafting well at all. I mean, since Peyton Manning. I mean, we were getting good talent because everybody wanted to play. And Arturo, I'm going to comment on your thing because completely agree. We didn't need to grow organically. We didn't need to have good drafts because everybody wanted to come in and play for cheap so that they could play with Peyton Manning. So once he left, then there was no depth. There was no incentive for him to draft well. And now we're in a position of, holy crap, the 2017 draft class is all gone. All of them the following year. Holy crap, you're doing terrible, right? So I think maybe it's a blessing in disguise in that it forced John Elway to reevaluate how he drafts, which is what's working for us now.
Absolutely.
Arturo, we are going to be here no matter what. This is our 5th year here at Orange Weekly, and it's been a rough 5 years, but we're not going anywhere. So yes, bleed orange and blue, and that's exactly who we are here at Orange Weekly.
Things will get better. And speaking of which, I want to take a quick little break and want to discuss all the things Orange Weekly has to offer.
Lots of it. We got this show, Orange Weekly After Dark, Monday nights, 9 p.m. Mountain Time. Our flagship show, Tuesdays, 7 p.m., Bourbon Broncos, No BS. We're live every Tuesday night there. We also got our post-game podcast, pre-game podcast. You guys can listen to those on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Pretty much wherever you listen to your podcast, I guarantee you we're there. Well, pretty much guarantee you we're there. We love you guys. We're glad you're here. We appreciate our supporters, and we're going to keep going here in a second. So we're not done. But if you really want to give us a little bit extra support, we're not asking for money or anything. Just go to those podcast places and give us a 5-star review. That's what helps us out more than anything. And so really appreciate if you guys do that, but check out those podcasts, and don't forget about Ragers. Our newest podcast comes out on Saturday afternoons, Saturday evenings, And if you're interested in sports betting at all, Raymond does a great job breaking down the sports betting lines for the upcoming game. He doesn't just tell you what bets he's taking. He tells you why he's taking those bets. He looks at other bets and explains to you why he's not taking those bets, and really helps you learn about what he's doing. Before this last week, he was 19-8-3 on the season. I think this guy knows what he's talking about. And so that's, even if you're not interested in actually making bets, this is a good way to really hear about, how the Vegas odds tie into what we think is going to happen. So it's kind of a predictions show as well. So definitely check that out. Visit our website, BroncosOrangeWeekly.com, for the latest articles. We also it's a one-stop shop for our latest shows, our latest podcasts, all of that, a little bio about who we all are. So check out that. Man, what don't we have? Oh, we got a pregame show and we are the original Broncos halftime show. Original, 5 years before other people start copying us. So yeah, looking at you guys, you know who you are. Halftime hash every game. As soon as halftime starts, we are live. So don't listen to those announcers on TV. The halftime people, they don't know what they're talking about. Join us. We're more fun and maybe funny looking. I thought that was going to go better. Anyway, so back to Broncos talk. But yeah, here at Orange Weekly, fans, brews, and Broncos news. More football talk. Jason, Broncos, how's it going?
Absolutely. You would have heard crickets chirp at that last little joke you had, but they were so uncomfortable with how unfunny.
Is that why it dropped 10 viewers all at once?
Absolutely.
Hit that share button for us, guys.
The only thing I was going to add is to hit that share button, share our page as well. The bigger the Orange Weekly fan base grows, the more conversations we can have on all this. And Red Cloud, we appreciate you.
OG.
One of the OG fans. It's great. With that said, entering one of our newer segments on Orange Weekly After Dark, because we aren't able to give Mile High salutes on losing weeks, and I was getting tired of not being able to have a segment on here. Losing weeks, we now have the game's empowerless moment. And for me, I'll let you think about yours, but my empowerless moment was that late game Drew Lock interception that set up the Falcons for their last touchdown of the game. I think that put the game just bit out of our reach at that point. We had started to get things rolling. Our defense was holding the Falcons. Drew Lock got off balance and tried to force a play to happen and went right to a Falcons player who took it right down to our 10-yard line. I think if he avoids that mistake, we could have a pretty different outcome and might be able to give a Mile High salute today. But instead, Drew Lock gets my empowerless moment of the game.
I want to pick something on the defense, but they're just so much. And so as for a moment, man, I don't know if I can pick a moment. I think it's just the entire defense, and not totally to their fault. I mean, you can pick any one of the moments where Matt Ryan was picking on our beat up secondary. We didn't have Shelby Harris. So, you know what? The defense did what they could. And so I can't fault them too much for that. But where we just did not step up, look, I'm sorry. Forgive me, defense. I'm gonna go to the offense and empowerless moment. Offensive coordinator. We ran 22 times, and it just we were not committed to the run game. And so why are we passing 2/3 of the time in the game? Especially early on, we're finding ourselves in these thirds and long. So I know that's not a moment, but there's too many bad things that kind of just really gelled together. That was the story of the game, and it was mostly on the offense. And yeah, Jeremy, the defense is tired of picking up all the offense. So they're doing what they can with 6 of the main starters out, 5 or 6 of them, and they can only do so much. But when your offense continually goes to 3 and out, maybe gets 1 first down, not putting up points on the board, what do you expect from them? You know what I mean?
And here's one more thing, and this one is directed a bit to Red Cloud / any other guy who's completely sold on Drew Lock not being the guy. Peyton Manning.
Yes.
And disclaimer.
Who?
Eli Manning's brother.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Better known Eli Manning. Disclaimer, I'm not saying Drew Lock is Peyton Manning, but I just want to illustrate how you can't make a decision on a quarterback their rookie year. Peyton Manning with the Colts, his rookie year, they went 3-13. All right. Okay. Well, hey, that's not all Manning's fault, right? The guy threw 28 interceptions his rookie year. In his first 16 games as a professional NFL starting quarterback, he threw 28 interceptions. What did the Colts do?
Cut him?
Almost. Not even close. They said, hey, this guy, we know this guy's talent. We're going to ride it out. We're going to see what happens. And he made a big jump his second year in the league. And again, I'm not trying to say Drew Lock is the next Peyton Manning by any means, but what I am saying is you cannot make a decision on your quarterback you've drafted believing they're going to be your franchise guy.
Yeah.
And after 10 games, I think I saw earlier, 12 games as a professional athlete, to take that and go, he's not the answer. He's terrible. He's a wash. He's a bust, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
You got to give this guy way more time. I mean, the greatest quarterback in the NFL threw 28 interceptions. I went 3-13 his rookie year. So I'm just saying, don't make up your mind about this guy yet. You can have question marks, and I think that's more than fair. Yeah, I think he's got some rough habits. But what I'm saying is, I'll even look up Elway's rookie numbers too, because I know Elway's rookie numbers weren't great.
He got beat in 3 Super Bowls by a lot.
I mean, that too. So, I mean, point being is you can't make a decision on a quarterback based on their first 12 games in this league, because more times than not, rookie quarterbacks do not do well. Here's what I was going to bring up, though. Daniel, thanks for joining us. Did you guys talk about Bosby being released by the Cardinals? We have not yet. I did want to get to that. Obviously, we talked about our secondary not having a lot of depth, missing Callahan and Bouye. Our secondary got torched. And there is that discussion of, well, we got rid of Bosby. I think it's Devontae Harris did not do well for us back there in terms of depth, trying to cover for Callahan. So Bosby, he did just get released by the Cardinals. He did say it's not injury related. So he said that if a team wants him by this next Sunday, he'd be able to and ready to go. He already knows the Broncos system. He already knows the Broncos coaches, the defensive scheme. There is talk we get Callahan and Bouye back, but there's always the chance of setbacks or even getting injured again. Is Bosby a guy we go after?
Shut your mouth.
Hey,
don't even say that.
At the way this year's going, that's the safe bet. If this was a rager, the over-under on injured Broncos players per game would be 5.
It hurts.
So do you go out and do you try to convince Bosby after release him to our practice squad twice, I believe, already now?
Sorry.
Do you try to convince him that if he comes and plays for us, he will have a roster spot at least through the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, why not at this point? But that's an awkward conversation. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Did you sell your place in Denver yet? No, maybe, yeah. Oh, well, what if you just come on back up here because we need help? Yeah, at this point, what do we have to lose?
Yeah, I think it's, again, I don't know if I'm Bosby, if I agree to that because of the way, and it's a business. It's nothing against him, but it's basically an organization that said twice now, hey, you're not good enough for our roster spot. And, this most recent time, another NFL team thought he would help them out. And I don't know why the Cardinals released him already. From what I gathered, he actually had a decent game with his first game as the Cardinals. Maybe it's because Vance Joseph is that defensive coordinator and he doesn't know what he's doing and releases good talent. But
red flags? The fact he got released, is there something in the locker room that's causing problems?
Wouldn't you think you would have heard that by now, though? I mean,
he's guy, not a big name player. So
he's not a big name player, but there were multiple teams after him once the Broncos released him to the practice squad again. And I don't think the Broncos put him on that practice squad because of anything he did. I think it's just at the time we had Callahan, Bouye was coming back. We thought that Harris. I'm trying to remember our other cornerback's name that I'm totally blanking on right now.
Simmons?
No, not our safety.
Our safety.
Anyways,
no.
Yeah. So they thought that those were the answers. Harris, I thought was terrible. Was definitely weakest link, and I think Bosby's a better corner than Harris. But I think at the time the decision was, hey, we need to make a roster spot because we were reactivating Bouye from injured reserve, so we have to keep the 53-man roster, and so somebody has to go down the practice squad. I think they made a bad decision on who that is, but I don't think it was any personnel reasoning or he's a bad person in the locker room or a bad fit, and we're just cutting him from the team altogether. They wanted to keep him, but because we were releasing him back to the practice squad, other teams in the league had the right to try to talk him into coming to play for them instead. And there were multiple teams. I think the Jets were in on it. Obviously the Cardinals. I want to say, I could be wrong, but I believe the Patriots as well. There were multiple teams that were after him, and he decided to go to the Cardinals. So I don't think that it's anything personality-wise or red flag-wise. I think he's just finding a hard time finding a good fit with the team. And for whatever reason, teams think that he's not just quite good enough. They'd rather have him on that practice squad as a late call-up than somebody on a roster spot. But I think what the Broncos showed yesterday is a play like Bosby would have really helped.
You know what also really helps? When you're looking for car insurance or homeowners insurance or property insurance, it really helps if you reach out to Centennial State Insurance Agency. Those guys are fantastic. It's a smaller insurance agency, but with that, you get honesty and you get that personal interaction that you don't get from any of these other big companies. So you will have a dedicated insurance agent that will be the one that, God forbid, if you ever need to, you'll call them. They know you, they know your family, they know your situation, and they'll be able to help you out. It's not like you're going to be stuck on the side of the road and calling somebody, and on hold for 30 minutes. And then eventually maybe somebody answers that may or may not be in this country, and they don't care about you because they're just getting paid by the hour and whatever. They've never talked to you before, and so they don't care. These guys do. They care enough to tell you that they're not the right choice for you if that is the case. I know for me personally, I was shopping around, reached out to them, and they said, based off your situation, we're a little bit too expensive based off of what we're seeing, but this other place probably is a better fit for you right now. And you try to get any of the other big places to say that. Maybe a place named Nick, that rhymes with Bipo or something. They won't tell you that. But yeah, so seriously, guys, if you're looking around, you want to give yourself just an idea of what's out there for any of your insurance needs, reach out to the Centennial State Insurance Agency, 303-838-0554. It's getting smoother.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. Your creative mind is a work of art.
You know what else is a work of art?
Not you. We're moving on here. We're going to start to wrap things up here, guys. To post any final comments, questions. If you have an empower list moment that you wanted to throw out there, feel free to share that as well. Michael, do you think Vaughn is done? It's too soon to tell. And just to hit all angles here, if you're asking done as in career wise, no, he's not done in his career. If you're saying as in this year, I think we evaluate where the team is at in about 4 weeks from now. In about 4 weeks, we'll know one more about Von Miller's progress. He is a little ahead of schedule. Yeah. He has said himself he's trying to get back in 3 to 4 weeks. So I think it depends on where the team is. If, say, worst case scenario, we're 3-9 at that point, then I say no. There's no reason to. There's rest him, make sure he's healthy for next year. There's no need. Now, if best case scenario, say we are 7-5 at that point, and we're fighting, we're in that playoff hunt, we're fighting for a wild card spot. Yeah, he can do a lot of good, and not just on the field, but just that leadership presence he would have on the field, and also the respect he would get from the other team, where it's going to open up some more for Chubb and other defensive linemen to try to get in there and get some pass rushing as well. So I think I say it totally depends right now. I think there's definitely absolutely a potential to see him this year again. I think he's healing well enough. The reports are all positive. Again, he's a little ahead of schedule. He's saying he wants to be back. So it's definitely not out of the realm. I just think it's a matter of how do we manage it depending on where the team is at in the standing. So time will tell. Last thing I wanted to touch on, we touched on how, Matt Ryan picked apart our secondary, our rough start as a whole. And we talked a little bit about, the limited running plays. And this is where it ties in, is our offensive line was awful. I mean, Drew Lock was constantly under pressure on passing plays, and our run game was never able to get established. And I don't think it was necessarily anything against Lindsey or Gordon. I think it was the offensive line didn't create a single hole for them to run through all game, and they got dominated in the trenches this game. I mean, from start to finish, they were getting pushed around, beat on the edges, ran around right through the middle sometimes. And so run game, pass game, all of that was just terrible. I mean, is this a sign of returning woes, or is this a one-off game? Is this something to be concerned about moving forward? Or is this just an example of it just wasn't our day?
Can you say returning woes if they never left to begin with? Look, we've had offensive line problems, the Peyton Manning era, maybe even before that, but we were able to cover that up with Peyton Manning, who could call out defenses so well that they didn't need to be fantastic because, he knew exactly what was going to happen before the ball snapped. He knew exactly where he was going to throw. And so, other than a run game, but when you're so afraid of Peyton Manning's passing game, you don't, it opens up the run game automatically. So, you look at the center, Lloyd Cushenberry, and that is – to be a rookie in that position is probably just as hard, if not harder, than being a quarterback, rookie quarterback especially. So, doing the best he can. He's not doing well, but this is also, it hurts. It hurts to see the offensive line doing this. But, yeah, I think that was a big part of it in all phases of the offense is that weak offensive line. Garrett Bowles, again, had a very nice game. He did well. But when the whole offensive line is just struggling all across the board, yeah, it hurts. Who had the most rushing yards yesterday?
Drew Lock did.
Drew Lock had the most rushing yards. So that tells you something.
Not a good look when your quarterback leads in rushing yards and even had a rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
Not good. Rough look. Garrett Bowles, again, did have a solid game, but he's only one man. I believe I saw that halfway through the season, he is the second rated on Pro Football Focus in the league right now. Halfway through, I'll get a little fact check here running here in a second, see if I can get that confirmed. But either way, he's been a bright spot, and I think he is definitely playing for a contract extension. And at this point, I think he's pretty much doing all he can for that. I was try to pull it up.
It might be tackles.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see what we got. Jose got a few comments here. Julio Jones was breaking ankles out there. That's what he does, especially against a secondary that's decimated by injuries. You also say, oh, look at that. Fact checked, approved. This is not fake news.
Not fake news. Garrett Bowles, number 2. Orange Weekly is not fake news.
Orange Weekly After Dark. You heard it here. And it was fact checked and everything. If there's any guy that would want to prove me wrong, it would be this one. And so the fact that he couldn't, it's good news for us. But
who's Marinez?
Sounds Canadian. Go back up to Jose's comment, though. I think Locke needs to step up as a leader. I know it takes time, but he needs to be out there with a purpose, not just fourth quarters. And I agree. And again, we talked a little bit about his just raw talent-wise and skill and the actual performance, and whether you can judge him on max of 12 games at this point or not. But here's a really great point is we haven't really talked much about the leadership aspect of it. And is Drew Lock lacking in leadership? Is he starting to show some promise? Is he starting to show some accountability? Or is this something where he just needs to turn up altogether?
Even if you have a bad offensive line, yeah, that makes things worse when you're a second-year quarterback, essentially a rookie quarterback, and more or less. Yeah, it's going to hurt, but there are ways he can step up, especially in the leadership front. And again, time will tell. As of right now, I can't say one way or the other. You just can't.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think he can improve on that leadership aspect. Personally, I personally believe that if you want to start trying to lead in a way where you're trying to hold teammates accountable, you got to pick up your own game first. And he has struggled. I mean, how do you try to yell at your offensive line that they need to protect better, like we've seen Tom Brady do in years past with his offensive line? Effectively so. He'll love him or hate him. It's something he's done, and it shows that leadership aspect. But how can you do that when you start throwing terrible interceptions? The one thing I will mention though is that I liked and I disliked. I liked from a leadership standpoint and not like from a physical standpoint. But when he rushed for that touchdown, he could have slid. He could have, gone down it was a first down pickup. So he could have just slid at the 2-yard lineup, first and goal. Instead, he lowered his shoulder, took a big hit to get a rushing touchdown. Mm-hmm. And again, it scares him because of his injury history. But I think that's the type of leadership we need to start seeing it from him, is that leadership by example. Yep. I'm not so concerned right now about his leadership with words, because again, that's very tricky. If your own game is, his QBR yesterday was like 47, and that's not the first time it's been very low. Yeah. And I don't think you can start calling out teammates language-wise until you pick up your own game. But
fact check, it was 77.9 yesterday for Drew Lock.
Depends on which one you're looking at.
We're looking at this one. It's at 77.9.
Well, go to the ESPN. So go to the ESPN. Yeah, ESPN QBR ratings. What was yesterday's ESPN?
Oh, look, a 52.1. You were still wrong.
That's completion percentage, genius.
Oh, damn it. 48.7. You were still wrong.
I said 48. Point being, yet again, this guy can't read statistics. First of all, second of all, ESPN QB rating was 48.7. I am 2 for 2 on the night, and Kevin is 0 for 5, even though he's only attempted on 2. Anyways, I digress. The leadership, I think, is starting to show, but it needs to be more by example. The last thing I will want to close on here, Daniel, is I hope they sign my friend Lindsay. You guys are friends.
Tell Lindsay that we at Orange Weekly love him.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding about that, but kind of slide that one in there.
He's a great friend.
Well, I'm sure he already watches our show, but
I hear he has a great family too.
Yeah. You wouldn't know.
I wouldn't, or would I? Anyways, again, I digress. Yeah, I think he was very underutilized. He barely had any snaps compared to Melvin Gordon, which again, I don't understand that. I think we need to feed him a lot more than we have been. But yeah, I think he's the heartbeat of this team right now. I think the way he handles himself on and off the field, his competitive edge on the field, the way he gets in other teams, like he'll take a big hit, he'll pop right back up, he'll get in the face of the guy that hit him. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if he's undersized compared to who just hit him or whatever. He'll get up, he'll get right in their face, he'll chirp at them a bit. And he lights fires under this team. We saw that against the Chargers, where he had that 55-yard touchdown. He's going to be a restricted free agent. And I agree because of that. Pay the man. He'll be a restricted free agent. This guy already has 2 1,000-yard seasons. You can make the argument he would have another one of those if it wasn't for his injury that kept him out for a while, and the underutilization of him as well. But yeah, it's he's the guy that we need to keep. We need to find a way to keep him.
100%. I will close on, what? Yeah, it really sucked having a quarterback yesterday that was, 3 interceptions, 0 touchdowns, terrible. Oh, wait, that was Tom Brady.
Interesting.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Tom. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, but look, overall it sucked. Obviously, this was a game that we had a chance to go 500 on the season, and it just didn't come to fruition in any way, shape, or form. I liken it to the Broncos got on the plane. They arrived in Atlanta. They put on their uniforms, and they were like, cool. Now what? What? Oh, I want to go home.
Yeah, it was definitely.
That's harsh. But it did hurt.
It did. And it was definitely, again, back-to-back weeks where we did not show up until the second half of the game, which you can't do in the NFL. So, yeah, with that.
Red Cloud, from us here at Orange Weekly, make sure you tell your friend Mariness happy birthday from us, but otherwise.
Yeah. Check out our stuff throughout the rest of this week. It is Raiders week. Beat the Raiders. Always doesn't matter how you're doing in the season. It's always a big week when you can beat the Raiders. So join us for the rest of the week as we talk about upcoming Raiders information. With that, as always,
go Broncos.
Go Broncos.
Adios.
Do what I like, yeah, I do what I like, yeah, I do what I like. Sipping goose, sip is right, and I go with the flow, yeah, I go with the flow, yeah, I go with the flow, cause I know I'm the show. In the zone, here I go, in the zone, here I go, in the zone, here I go.